I think we're missing a piece. I think if you don't have a relationship with the water, that if you're not able to be in the water, I mean, listen, we shower multiple times a day. We're in bathtubs. We drink it. Without it, I mean, next to air, water is one of the keys to existence. I mean, without water, there's no life. I think it's part of existence. I think it's part of making you feel alive. You go there, the intensity of this situation strips everything away. It just pulls everything, it pulls you away. The you that combs his hair and puts the clothes on and walks down the street, that's the you, that goes away. And the monks would say, the now, living in the moment, and all of these terms. In this moment, there's a stillness. That's the highest level of existence in my opinion, because none of this other stuff does that. And this stuff's free. I mean, this is free. It doesn't cost money. You don't buy it. It's not like if you have more of it, you can get more. Only your effort and your skill and your desire and your will are going to give you this. So this is earned stuff that you earn without reward, really, other than just the feeling.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Laird Hamilton, the American big wave surfer, stuntman, and the inventor of hydrofoil and toe-in surfing. You pioneered the big wave surfing movement, risking your life by taking on massive walls of water up to 100 feet high. In the year 2000, you earned your place in surfing history, catching a gigantic wave in Tahiti dubbed the heaviest ever ridden. You have revolutionized the sport, creating toe-in surfing to access waves previously too huge to surf, as well as developing the hydrofoil for riding above the water's surface. You are the creator of Extreme Performance Training, a holistic program involving underwater workouts, ice heat sessions, and breath work, and you have acted and performed stunts in Hollywood blockbuster movies like Waterworld, Die Another Day, and Point Break. Laird, welcome to London Real.
No, Brian, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. We were talking earlier, I grew up in San Diego, funny enough, and, where I went, Torrey Pines High School, which is where Tony Hawk, the skateboarder, graduated from, they had surf PE. And I remember when I first started in that school, it was just so strange that there were these kids that would meet on the beach and surf. And, a lot of the guys that I went to high school with, Laird, they never left San Diego because surfing, it was a part of them. It was like a part of who they were as human beings. And, I'm into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and when you hear like Hicks and Gracie and the Gracie families talk about it, it's like they use the water for it's a big part of their lives. And before we jump in, I was wondering, maybe you could explain to the average civilian, what surfing means to a surfer, because it's not just a sport, is it? It's almost like a way of life.
Well, first of all, I want to put one thing in before I start, which is just to make you a little jealous. So Hoist comes to my house. Hoist Gracie comes and trains with us on the weekends. So I get to enjoy his passion. But, the ocean for a surfer, I describe it as my greatest teacher, but it's and I don't like to get too too kind of ethereal and spiritual about it, but there's a connection that we have. I tell someone, listen, just to be in the ocean and just to be there is that in itself is enough to draw you to come back day in and day out. But then to ride a wave and feel the sensation of riding a wave, I mean, that is it's kind of has it's like one of the reasons for being alive. Like if you looked at it and you said, well, one of the reasons for being alive is you're going to be a husband, a father, a friend, a man, and you're going to ride waves and you're going to be in the ocean. I mean, it's just, for me at least, and for those who are connected to the sea, which is where we all came from anyway. And I think there's some deep physiological things that happen to us as well. But, I mean, I think we could talk about this, forever.
Yeah, I got challenged to do a half Ironman a couple years ago, and I did it. We made like a movie about it, and I never was a big swimmer, and it was the hardest part for me. But once I started swimming, I stuck with it, and now I swim once a week. I got into the butterfly, and there's something about being in the water that I can't explain. And I guess maybe it comes from our aquatic roots back in the day, but it's a weird way of moving my spine, and then all these things seem to kind of come together, for me in the water. So there's something there, I think.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at, just think about the fact that there's no gravity, that you just don't, it's one of the places, one of the very few places that you can actually be, that there's no gravity. So you have that kind of tension that we live under every day, all day long is gone for moments. And like I said, the compression of water allows the blood to flow through the lymphatic system that cleanses it in 1 hour, which normally takes like a 24-hour period, something like, there's some science like that. The truth is that that environment is connected to us in a way, and swimming itself it's almost like, I'd like to say like ballet or dance. I mean, if you look at the fluidity of a beautiful swimmer, you watch an animal that swims well, it's just so poetic. And so there's something magical about water. I mean, I have a giant swimming pool in my backyard that I spend hours in when I'm not in the ocean, or when I'm not, accessing an ocean that has that kind of beauty that draws you in with the creatures and there's a lot going on in the sea.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of that training you do in your backyard and what you do in the pool a little bit later. What's the longest you've gone without surfing, and how does it make you feel when you're not there? And what do you say to all the people who don't have access to the ocean? What do they do? Are they going crazy, do you think?
Well, I think we're missing a piece. I think if you don't have a relationship with the water, that if you're not able to be in the water. I mean, listen, we shower multiple times a day. We're in bathtubs. I mean, we drink it. Without it, I mean, next to air, water is one of the keys to existence. I mean, without water, there's no life. And so that's how deep our connection. So if you don't have some sort of relationship with it, I mean, one of our greatest innate fears is fear of drowning. And it's because, again, the relationship that we have with water goes so deep into our primal being that you're missing out. You're missing out one of the you're missing out on one of the magic things. Like flying. Like if you never flew in a plane and never experienced a sensation of flying, you kind of need to experience a sensation of being in the water, on the water, and around the water. And a world without water for me would be. It would actually be a world without life. I mean, when we look around for places with life, we're looking for water. But I mean, I'm fortunate to have developed a relationship, and I grew up at the sea. So it's one of those things that you take for granted. But, I've had times when I've been away. I never go too long without being in the water. And I've gotten better at it because I've started to understand my need for it. So I'm able to subsidize it. I'm able to kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to, or it's just not inviting me. So I have other ways of getting in the water and being around water. And so it doesn't, but when I was younger, I mean, within a day or two, I would always say the gills dry out. My longest periods of time without being in the water were really around injury. So I was really like, you get a severe injury and then you can't go in the ocean. I'd cut my casts off and I'd do anything I could to get back in the water. Sometimes that would, kind of, slow down the healing, and you learn your lessons. You learn your lessons about that stuff. And, I think for me, when I do go through a long period of time when I'm not able to be in the water, that almost fuels my passion and my love. It's a little bit like fasting or something where you just really savor it and appreciate it. It seems we, the humans, when we take things for granted, you have it every day and it's always there, you just kind of don't appreciate it like you should. And I'll sometimes self-induce that. Like, I put myself in California in the summertime, and the ocean isn't quite as inviting as obviously the middle of the Pacific in Hawaii, where it's one of the most treacherous, but one of the most inviting oceans in the world. So it's almost like I hold myself back, and then I'm able to come into it, with full passion and vigor that, like you would in off season, like in your sport. You don't play a sport all year round and then think, well, I'm going to have the World Cup right now. They prolong that stuff every 4 years just so there's an anticipation and a build up. And I've started to learn how to kind of self-impose that stuff.
We have a park here in London called Hampstead Heath, and there's a pond there that's called the Men's Pond. And actually, I go there every Saturday of the year. And luckily, I've had Wim Hof on here a couple times. It was the first time 5 or 6 years ago. So I'll jump in this thing at like 4 degrees centigrade. And it's my ritual every week. And sometimes I don't want to go in, but I know when I go in, I feel so much better. I do some breathing. And so it's funny you say that, because I search out the water too. Even in the middle of a massive city like London, people are always checking my Instagram like, where is that? Because it doesn't look like London, but it's actually right near in the middle of the city, really.
Yeah, you seek it out. Why are you drawn to it? I mean, these are internal draws that we're pulled to these things, like for some fear and for some danger, and I mean, I think some of it's hard to difficult to somebody goes, well, how come you're drawn to riding a giant wave or something? And I'm like, some of it just doesn't have, there's no conscious understanding. It's more of a draw, and you're pulled towards it for, and people are adrenaline junkie. And I always kind of despise that description, because it's kind of like it invalidates the pureness of what you are and what you're interested in. It's like, oh, you're just doing that because you get this feeling. I'm like, that feeling is a byproduct, but you're drawn by something greater than just some sort of chemical reaction when you impose danger. It's a little more intricate than that.
What is it, do you think, a challenge for you, a teacher for you, like something you feel as like a man, as a human, you're drawn out to what you've described it sometimes, the rumbling and the low frequency sounds of that? Is it just pull you out there, and maybe there's not a logical answer to it all the time?
Well, and I think it's part of existence. I think it's part of making you feel alive. Like you go there, and when you're in these intense things, and the Wim would say, the nobleness and the wisdom of the cold. Where you go there, and the intensity of this situation strips everything away. It just pulls everything. It pulls you away. The you that combs his hair and puts the clothes on and walks down the street. That's the you that goes away. And, the monks would say, the now, living in the moment, and all of these terms doesn't get more in the moment than when you're in that pond, in that temperature, and everything is, and then it goes to breath. And in Hawaiian, the breath is the ha, or that's the life force. You breathe in, and then the spirit possesses. And when you die, the breath leaves and the spirit leaves. And I mean, you can go deep as you want, but I can tell you it's the now, it's the immediacy of existence. It's like, and there's no other clutter. There's no other, I mean, life, your brain is constantly running things and life is bombarding you, and you never really get a break. And in this moment, you get there's a stillness. There's a stillness and a break that you obviously need and probably need it on a regular basis. Actually, you seek it out. Like, where can I find, and maybe someone has to have 10,000 hours of experience at a skill to make it unconscious, so they can be in a flow state. Again, the now, the moment, that thing. So there's all different levels of it, but we know that these intense situations, and then you couple them with skill and knowledge, and then all of a sudden, that's the highest level of existence in my opinion, because none of this other stuff does that. And this stuff's free. I mean, this is free. Doesn't cost money. You don't buy it. It's not like if you have more of it, you can get more. You don't, this is, only your effort and your skill, and your desire and your will are going to give you this. This is going to be, so this is earned stuff, that you earn without reward, really, other than just the feeling, feeling. No, there's no, I mean, and I think, and that's where it starts, and people make lives of it. I mean, people make a living, people you're able to take pieces of it and turn it into a living. And if my friend would always say, shame on you. Like, if you're good and you're lucky, shame on you.
When you were just describing that there, it sounded like a conversation I had with Alex Honnold, who, climbed El Capitan and had the movie Free Solo, and Jimmy Chin, the director, was here. And there was a guy, I don't know if you know this guy, called the French Spider-Man. He was the guy that used to climb the Sears Tower back in the day. So he was here, and he said the same thing. He said, when I'm on that building, he said, there's nothing else I'm thinking about. I'm just there. It's this pure moment. And yes, I could die, but it's this place I love to be. But he can only be there because he has the 10,000 hours to be able to survive there. So yeah, you got to earn it. You have to also take some risk. But for him, he says he thinks it's crazy what everybody else does on the normal earth. He thinks what he does is actually the least crazy thing.
I could agree with that. I could agree that that's the most sane, that from the outside looking, you would think, well, that's insane, but you're not looking at it from the evolution of it. You're not looking at it from the process of what you developed and what you're able to understand to get to that position. And in a way, you're in maybe the most control that you could possibly be on a planet getting hurled through outer space at 27,000 miles an hour or whatever it is. So I can understand exactly that perspective of and let's get something very clear. Living is a dangerous game. I mean, just being alive. So it's great to go, oh, well, that's dangerous, that's life risking. And I'm like, living is life risking. I mean, you could get hit by a bus on a corner, and it happens all the time. And so it's not, and by the way, you weren't even doing anything exciting. You were just standing there. So at least if you're gonna go, because we're all going, at least if you do go, maybe have a chance to go at something that you kind of earn the opportunity to be in that situation. And we don't get to choose the time and the place, but we do get to participate in it until then. And so until then, we get to participate. How do you want to participate? What do you want to experience? What do you want to feel? What do you want to feel while you're here? Because not a lot of great feelings if you're not moving, if you're not exposing. It's all the good stuff happens from exposure, right? Being vulnerable, like love. This is love. What's love? Like exposing your heart to someone. Well, what's climbing on the outside of a giant building? That's exposure. You're exposed. You're Alex on the, you're hanging on the edge. I mean, this is exposure. When you're out and exposed, that's where all the good stuff happens. I mean, but then, there's always a consequence for exposure, and the highest level of pain or vulnerability is life, right? I mean, or we don't even know though. So that's the whole thing. It's really the unknown. We don't even know. So, but we have made in our mind that death is the apex of vulnerability, right? Above everything. And so it's interesting to hear and know people that do similar things in different fields, that there's a similar attributes. I always say that life is a formulaic process. There's a certain formula to life. There's a formula to learning. There's a formula to failure. There's a formula to success. There's a formula, and it's just a matter of implementing it. What is the backdrop? Is it a mountain? Is it a wave? Is it the sky? Is it the river? Is it the ocean? Is it business? Is it love? Is it whatever? What is it? But the formula itself, when you really dissect everything, is pretty simple. Like we are. We're not that much different than one another at all, really. I mean, if I strip everything away and we just have fascia and it's just a body with two eyes, a nose. I mean, when everything's somewhat normal, you got 2 hands, 2 feet. I mean, we're not that much different. And either are the formulas. We have complex systems around it, but the formulas that govern us, like gravity, like if I drop somebody off a roof with nothing, they're all falling, and they're falling about the same speed, So, but yeah, it's an interesting thing, the commonality that we all the humans have, and then within that, the different groups of, there's people that are really scared and the people that aren't, the people that are really paranoid, the people that aren't. I mean, these are big separations. These are really defining things that separate us.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, that allowing yourself to be exposed is where all the great stuff happens, and that's where the pain happens. For a lot of my life, I kept myself out of that. Like I didn't even want to have like children in a family because I thought, oh man, I'm really exposed. Now that I've had them, I see the joy, but then I also know if you ever want to crush me, that's the way to do it. But now I know that's the game of life. So if you want the upside, you got to be prepared for the downside. And there is a bit of a formula to it once you figure it out, and I guess that applies to lots of things in life, right?
There's no end.
I want to talk about your journey, on surfing, big wave surfing, and a lot of the kind of the technology that you went down. And I want to tell you something that I thought was really insightful, and that was when your wife, Gabby Reese, was on Joe Rogan, and he asked her about you, and he said, well, what's Laird like? Is he always off doing this other stuff? And she said, yeah, he's off with his girlfriend. That's what she said. And that's one thing I remember from that episode. And I was like, this is a woman that gets it. She's like, that's what he's doing. He's with this girlfriend. He does these things that he's kind of crazy about. And then he comes home to me at night and he's with the family. Do you remember her saying that? And do you know what she meant by that?
Oh, yeah. Well, because I'm constantly reminded that this is the only other woman she'll share me with is the sea, And I think what makes Gabby not only an amazing, besides the most amazing woman that I've ever met, is her understanding of some of my needs, probably better than I understand them. And that these desires aren't against her. They're not against her. This isn't against, it's not, I'm going to the ocean and that's taking away from her. It actually is adding to her and bringing to her me and all my essence. And, I get a commonly asked question that I experience throughout my career has been, well, now that you have kids, you must not want to do the dangerous things and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but first of all, they didn't ask me to come in. I brought them into the world. And so why would I put on them, well, I used to do things until you came, and then I stopped doing the things that brought me all this joy and happiness and all these things. I stopped doing that now because I have you, unless I really just want to stop. Now, if I really just want to stop, then I should just say, you know what, I did that and I'm good with it. I don't need to do that anymore. But I think it's important that they also see me like Gabby understands what it does, what it means to me and what it does for me and what it is. I want them to see the effect it has on me, that having, I told somebody, I go, if I could just raise a content human, that as a father, as a parent, that at the end, I raised a content human, not a champion of this and a this, that, and no, I'm not talking about monetary success. I'm not talking about social success. I'm just saying a content human, because I don't see many the first step in that would be to have them find the thing that brings them something, brings them that feeling, right? That special feeling, which the ocean has done for me. I mean, I'm transitioning into really understanding the true special feeling that existence is supposed to bring, which is service. That at the end of the day, and I think as being a parent, it gets into service. We're talking about service, and that ultimately, through some of these other things I'm starting to do, I'm realizing that that's probably the apex of happiness. That true happiness is connected directly to service, of you being of service to the community. First, you being of service to you, because you have to start there. Then you're being of service to your family, then your friends, then the community, being of service. But I want them to see that. I want them to see what, and the ocean has been something that I've been of service to, and it's been of service to me. I have a relationship with it that has built the foundation. I want them to see that. I want them to see when I come back from riding a giant wave, what that does to Dad. What does Dad look like when Dad does this thing that brings him this feeling? Because maybe they'll be able to identify that and go, I can try to find that in my life. Maybe I can find that in art, or maybe I can find that in cooking, or maybe I can find that in work, or maybe I can find that in a relationship. Find it somewhere. Just please find it, And so, I describe parenting because it's easy to get off track, but parenting is one of the apex of evolution, I would believe. And I think no one tells you how hard it truly is, because you'd probably not do it. Like you said, hey, I don't know if I want to be that vulnerable, have kids. But I describe parenting as building a samurai sword, where you take steel, you heat it up, you beat it with a hammer, and you put it in ice. And that's what my children do to me. They take me, they heat me up, they beat me with a hammer, and they put me in ice. And they do that over and over. And then I'm a tempered soul, Then I'm like the hardest steel in the world, or I break. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably what it's like. You mentioned the service thing. It took me to my early to mid 40s to start to realize that was the key. And because most of my life I grew up, and I think a lot of the world grows up in this, it's all about me. I used to get my hair cut at a place down the road, and they used to play MTV with the sound off. And I'd have to look at it while he was cutting my hair. And I was like, do you watch this all day long? Because all I see are, gold chains and cars and girls. And I was like, this is kind of what we tell everybody is the answer. It's all about our personal gain. And so it takes a long time to get that service message, doesn't it?
Well, the ad man's working hard to tell you, just buy that and buy that and buy that, and you're going to be all good. But you have to go through that process, I believe, if you're fortunate enough to go through that process, and you see it time and time again. Success doesn't breed happiness. I mean, you see plenty of people that are highly successful. In fact, if anything, it probably has the opposite effect, because you were expecting it to do something different than it does. And I can experience, I experienced it myself. I thought, all I need to do is just ride the biggest waves and be the best at doing it, and that's going to take care of everything. And then you get there and you're like, oh, that didn't take care of everything. Now what do we do? Now what's our next move? So I think that in that process of where you have to be able to be fortunate enough to go through that, and then you realize, and you see it happening a lot with people, if you're struggling and you're trying to survive, and you're just trying to make enough to eat and give yourself some clothing and housing. I mean, that's for a lot of people, that's, and you're of service in your community. I mean, that's why you have so many people that are almost impoverished, that are very happy, because they're content, because
right.
they're going through the effort to just take care of the necessities. I always say complaining is a luxury. I mean, it's like, you want to start complaining. Well, you have the time to complain, because if you were just trying to eat, and you were just trying to, house yourself, you're not complaining. You're like, hey, I got to figure out how to get some food and feed my family, and, keep the roof over the house. And but it is about service. At the end of the day, there's nothing more internally satisfying than helping people. It's what we are, what's what we are we're a communal creature, and we need to help people. And when we do, it brings us a feeling that nothing else does. And it's to the point where you don't even need any public declaration of it. You don't need a public declaration like, wow, look at you. You're such a good helper. You help these people. You can do it. And parents get it. Listen, we get it. That's where you start your training, is in parenting. You get it from, hey, you get to clean the house, you get the thing, make sure make sure the place is good, protect the kids, make the thing, get the food, you're doing stuff for them in the dark. And moms are, believe me, moms can be content being at a house. They don't need to run a Fortune 500 company and show you how smart they are. They look at us, some of our behavior is like, we are crazy. We're crazy. Like, look at them, how crazy they are, and I'm not saying that there's not, women that are highly intelligent and more than capable of running any of these businesses. I mean, some of the best leaders in the world are women leaders, and we need more of that. It's just that they also are highly aware of how important it is to protect and take care, and for the feeling of accomplishment. And it's like, I wish I maybe had gotten that sooner, like understanding service. And I'm able to be, I'm developing my life to try to be more of service, but it's what it's all about. And there's nothing higher than, first of all, a mother, because without a mom, there's nobody, there's nothing, we don't exist.
Yeah. They go through that physical transformation too. And, we had some guests in the past talk about the psychedelic experience, which is ego destroying. And sometimes you're not in control of your body. And, I think it was Terrence McKenna said, well, a woman goes through that in childbirth, and that a man never experiences that, where all of a sudden your whole body is being transformed for the service of someone else and the birth of someone else. And so I guess I think when women get all these inherent lessons, and like you said, the service that a lot of us men just unfortunately don't get, and we have to go on our own journeys.
Yeah, well, and we hope we arrive. We hope we're smart enough to arrive.
I think one of your fellow Hawaiians, Shep Gordon, he's like a kind of a famous agent for like Mike Myers and stuff like that. And that was his thing. He always said at the end of the conversation, he said, service to others, Brian. He said, that's the key, service. He's one of the first guys that said that to me. Talk to me about your journey with surfing, because early on, I think you decided you didn't want to go the competitive route. And I think you had seen your dad kind of go down that way. And it just meant that, there was just a different standard, a different lifestyle, a different way of judging, whereas you kind of wanted to do it for the pursuit. Am I getting that right? And how would you explain that to someone who doesn't know the ins and outs of that culture?
Well, I was fortunate enough to grow up at a time when the competitive aspect of surfing was kind of only one part of it. It hadn't proliferated into the whole entire sport and really been the focus of it. And so there were people in surfing that were some of the best surfers in the world, but they weren't competitive surfers. They weren't surfing in contests. So, one guy would be the champion of the contest, but then there was maybe a guy that was this even better surfer that wasn't surfing competitively. He was just free surfing. And surfing kind of has a unique thing where we have an ability to kind of be artistic too. It's a sport, but you can still do like music or cooking. I mean, first of all, how do you judge music? How do you judge a chef? I mean, you have to sit there and be like, well, I like this food, I like that food, but there's, it's kind of confusing. And a little bit like gymnastics, there's some confusion in how do you determine the winner. I watched my dad go through kind of some trials and tribulation of, he was an incredible free surfer, artistically one of the top surfers of his day, subject his performance into competitive kind of format and suffer kind of some, suffer from that, and be confused by, maybe you surfed the best you've ever surfed and everybody says, yeah, that was great, you won. And then the other guy wins by 0.5 because he, needs to be the world champ and who knows what. I mean, it's the sponsors, the thing. I mean, there's so many factors. And I think I had such a competitive nature anyway, that my nature to be competitive was such that it brought out the worst in me. It made me like I would have been better in rugby, or some other contact sport or something like that. Even though I was more individual, I did, maybe jujitsu or some other martial arts stuff, or, again, but bringing out a naturally aggressive and a naturally aggressive and naturally competitive thing to the point where it's obnoxious. And so surfing offered me kind of a free form stage, a stage where I could just do it how I wanted, when I wanted, the way I wanted, which I think suited me. And I liked the defining aspect of the danger, because that really separated a lot of people. And then all of a sudden you're in a smaller group. And then if you're, and I looked at that as the apex. I looked at big wave riding as the apex. And so I subjected myself, when we were kids, we would surf in these little contests, and it was great, and you'd win a t-shirt, and then all of a sudden money started coming into it, and some, other factors that made it not as like fun, like when you were a kid. And then that's when I separated from it. And I I vowed to try to, because it sounds kind of egotistical, but, as a little kid, I vowed to, my whole thing was I want to be the best. Like, I want to be the greatest surfer that's ever lived, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the story tale that you tell yourself when you're a little dreamer. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that would be, but that was my thing. And as I went, I just thought that, well, if you surfed, if you surf the biggest, the best, then you're the best in my the way I framed my world. And at the end of the whole process, what I really found is that I really love surfing, that I just love to surf, and I don't need anybody to see me. It's okay if I go with a friend of mine and we have the greatest surf that we, and it's nice to maybe have a picture and a video after, because you can be like, yeah, well, because it disappears. It's one of these things that disappears, like a bubble or a star or something. It disappears and it'll never be there again. But yeah, that kind of direction was, and then how are you going to get sponsored if you're not on the tour? And there was a lot of things around it that would have, led me away from my direction, but I stayed true to it, even though I branched into other areas. I would say my greatest, I would say my overarching goal from the beginning was to never lose my love for surfing. And I thought if I surfed in contests and I was a competitive surfer, that I would begin to lose it, because I watched surfers growing up, people I looked up to, go through that process, and eventually they stopped loving it. And I thought if I did that, I would define that as sin. I thought that would be sinful if I stopped loving surfing. And so my goal was to do it any way I could to make it so I wouldn't stop loving it. And that means I would change the way I did it, how I did it. That's where innovation came in. That's where a lot of stuff happened, because I had the freedom to go in any direction. I wasn't just like, hey, I'm making country music and that's it. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going to play some punk rock, and I'm going to go over here and play some Mozart, and I'm going to combine and make it punk Mozart with some country, and I'm going to create some new weird thing. And so I had that freedom to kind of do that, to be more exploratory and not be constrained by social pressure, or, through, in that industry, or, through the, okay, I got to surf like this, and the judges like that, and how are we going to perform, and and I felt there's a homogenization about that aspect of when you're confined, and then you're trying to please people, or you're trying to please a format. You kind of it stops your freedom, where I find that's where a lot of the greatest things happen, is in that, and it'll be in failure. Of course, when you're trying to do something different, there's a lot of failure in that. And you're not, and the failure isn't, other than people's scrutiny, and the negative things pointed at you, the failure is not, that doesn't determine whether you won or lost. So it can be like, oh, that looks stupid, or why would you do that? Or I thought you knew how to do that. As long as you can deal with that stuff, and water off a duck's back, and it's not like, well, you were going to be the world champ, but now you lost because you tried this new thing, and now you lost your sponsor and your thing, so that's not steering you. And so, I think there's multiple factors that influenced me to just kind of, I hope that answered your question, but just, took me off a different route, just opened my world to, just ultimately my imagination, just like how, just do it the way you want, when you want, how you want. And it's amazing where it could take you.
And what was that young Laird Hamilton like, 20-year-old? I heard you were, pretty aggressive as a kid, pretty competitive. Hawaii is known as a place where there's a lot of fights, right? BJ Penn, and I always hear it's a place where people scrap. How were you as a kid? And can you channel all that energy into a solo sport like surfing? Or like you said, do you need contact or something, or other people?
Well, first of all, Hawaiian culture is warrior culture. So that's warrior. It's a warrior culture. We grew up in a warrior culture.
Which means what? Which means this.
Well, it means that there's confrontation. It means that there's pecking orders, there's hierarchies, it's a warrior culture. But it's about respect. It's about respect. It's about honor. It's, all the things that make a warrior, right? So there's empathy. So we have empathy. We have character traits that warrior culture does, but there's certain things that we don't tolerate too. Like there's certain behaviors that, like, you can't stare at the guy like that. That's just not, you're coming into his aura, and you better be. That's going to, you don't look at a bear, because the bear will chase you if you aggress it. So, but. The thing about the ocean is that's true equality. The thing is everybody's equal before a wave, is what I always say. And the fact is, it's just your skill and your understanding and your abilities that can separate you from someone else. But the ocean doesn't discriminate. It doesn't go, oh yeah, okay, well, you're from a good family, or you're not, or you have money or you don't, or you're pretty or you're not, or it doesn't do any of that. It just treats everybody the same. And that's a beautiful thing. And I really enjoyed that. I'm like, okay, well, cool. Like if I do something stupid, I'm going to pay. And if I do something smart, then I'll be rewarded, kind of thing. It was like a real instantaneous, reward failure system. Like it's immediate. And I'll tell you what, you could take all the aggression in the world. You can take all the competitive spirit in the world, and the ocean will just absorb that like it will giant rock. It'll just be like, come on, bring it on. I love that. Give me all you got. And so it was an incredible environment for me to put all the energy that I had and take it. And if you, and in fact, if you don't submit, you'll be conquered. And it was really about submission. It was really about submitting and I was just maybe a hard case, like I was a hard case. It took a while for me to learn to submit, but over time you're forced to learn to submit to survive. And I'm like, wow, probably a pretty good life lesson. Learn to submit or die, or, and learn to submit, willingly submit, survive, And you start using that as a tool, pretty good teacher, amazing teacher, amazing environment, nothing like it that I know of. Gravity's one that, gravity's pretty honest that way. Gravity doesn't discriminate. Gravity doesn't, you can ask Alex, you can ask the Spider-Man. These are elements. These are, water, air, gravity. These are things that are pure. They're pure. They don't surprise you, only if you don't have knowledge. People be, oh, I couldn't believe that happened. Well, that's because you didn't understand it. If you truly understood the process, there would never be a surprise. You wouldn't be surprised, like, wow, why'd that bear run at me? Well, because you looked at it. Like, like why'd that wave do that to me, or why'd that current go that direction, or why did these things happen? Well, that's just part of how the system works. If you understand it, then that gives you that gives you a different perspective. All of a sudden, it's not as dangerous as you think it is. It's not as unhospitable as you think it is. It's why somebody can go do what they can do. Why can they go do what they can do? Well, because they understand it. They have a relationship with it to the point where they can go there and maybe even play there, like play in a place that Mark Spitz would get rescued, but he's the greatest swimmer in the world. But a kid that grew up in a current that knew how to deal with the surf could play in a place that someone that was the greatest swimmer in the world might need to be rescued because they just didn't have the knowledge of that. And I think, and that's probably true with, all of these environments, the side of that building, the side of that mountain, the deepness of that Arctic.
Talk to me about the terrain and the water and the geography that is Hawaii, because I've only been to Honolulu. It was a brief stop. I was like 14, so I don't know the experience, but I've talked to people that have been there on Ironmans, and I had Rich Roll in the studio who did the 5 Ironman on the 5 islands, and I've talked to people that aren't necessarily spiritual people that say, when you go to some of these islands, you better come with respect, like almost as if like a spiritual respect to the nature. And I remember watching Hawaii Five-0 as a kid and Magnum PI, and there's all this kind of mysticism around nature in Hawaii. How much of that is real and how much of it isn't? I mean, you grew up there.
Well, so Gabby came from the Caribbean. So she grew up in the Caribbean on those islands. And when she first came to Hawaii, she was awestruck by the magnitude of what Hawaii is, right? It's the most remote archipelago in the world. So it means it's the most remote islands in the world, the furthest from any continent. And you're coming out of the deep ocean. So they're the tops of volcanoes, the tips of volcanoes, which, molten lava and volcanoes. And then the exposure to the Pacific Ocean, you have the largest waves in the world. Okay, there's some other places that have giant waves, but the consistent exposure to, the largest body of water on Earth. And that combination of those mountains with that ocean, it just, the Hawaiians call it mana, which is the power of the land, the strength of the land. And people understand that because you go to certain places and you just feel the energy that comes off of the earth. And, is there a coincidence that it has some of the purest water in the world to drink? It has some of the best air in the world to breathe. I'm not sure. I don't know if that's a coincidence. The island I grew up on is the wettest spot on earth. It has second indigenous species only to the Amazon, and it's in the middle of the ocean. So you're talking about powerful land, tips of volcanoes being eaten by the ocean. This is kind of the essence of creation, right? This is the essence of, hurricanes are hitting this thing all the time, and we got massive floods, and the volcanoes that you can see from hundreds, if not thousands of miles away at times in their evolution. So that that power is there, right? That power is there. And that's why I say Hawaiian is warrior culture, but you're talking about that the people that are from there have that power too. And you meet people from Hawaii that grew up in Hawaii. There's a power that they have that is just connected to nature, that they're more connected to nature in a way that brings them a certain strength. It'd be like, I told somebody, you ever seen a wild animal versus a domesticated? Like I have coyotes and they run and they jump 9-foot fences like they're not even there. And I don't care what dog you own. The dog doesn't run and jump a 9-foot fence. It doesn't matter what dog you have. It's just the difference between wild and domesticated. It's like, and these islands they're wild. There's a wildness to them that brings that feeling. Like when people come there, they feel the, okay. And imagine when we really start to dissect it scientifically, we can look at negative ions and exposure in the thing, and that the air is not, no industrialized anything for thousands of miles in every direction. You have so many things that play into, who knows what kind of, energy and magnetic things are happening around volcanoes. And we have a lot of science that probably when you go science out on the place, you go, well, this has this much of this and that much of that, and that all these things that make it have this. That's why you feel the way you feel from it. But I just know off of instinct, like we do that a lot with a lot of the things that we do. We go off of feeling. Like like, hey, you eat something that doesn't feel right. It's like, hey, maybe it's probably not good for you. Like, just go with that. Like, and I don't mean garbage. I just mean like use eating as a, use your instincts the way you eat. Use your instincts with the people. Use your instincts with the place. Use these internal mechanisms that we've developed to give you that sensory, and when people go to Hawaii, some people don't like it there. Some people, because they come there and it's like this thing strips it all away. Like I always say, Hawaii is about how you are, not who you are, and some celebrities hate that. Celebrities will come there and they don't get the kind of treatment that they're looking for, and they misbehave, and then they get the opposite of what they're looking for, and they're in shock. And then some people go there and because they're the way they are and how they act, they get accepted and pulled into the family and pulled into as one of the family members. In Afghanistan, they have a thing where they make you part of the family. And they have a very similar almost exact same thing in Hawaii, where they call hanai, which is, if you know anything about the lonely soldier, like the lone soldier, like that he was pulled in and protected by a family. Well, Hawaii is the same way. They pull you in. You'll become part of the family. Like, it doesn't matter. We don't judge race or gender, or there's no judgment. You just say, you're hanai and you're pulled in and have that same, did the people get it from the way the island does it? Like, or did the island, what came first? But the fact is, the islands will spit you out. People come there and they're like, oh yeah, I can't be there. Might make you too introspective. Maybe makes you have to go inside. And people are like, yeah, no, I need distraction. Get me back to, retail therapy or something. But, I think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of that pureness, the pureness of, and with that comes, we always say bright light, dark shadow.
Right. There's a flip side of that as well. Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I'm definitely going to come check it out very soon. Let's talk about big wave surfing. And I guess the question I have is, when was the moment where you realized you were onto something that was going to change your life and create something new that no one thought? I know you had some critics originally because you're using like a powered vehicle to go out to these spots where that probably never happened in history. And yet you're this innovator. You're constantly in your brain innovating. I know you're in your shop innovating, which makes you really unique. But do you remember that moment where you're like, this is something and I've just done something epic?
Yeah, because I've been fortunate to be involved in quite a few innovations. Again, back to the formula. Once or twice, then you're like, here we go. You're kind of like, hey, I'm onto something. Part of it is that going off of your instinct, that feeling, and part of it is understanding what the potential is, before it happens. I think that's where innovation comes in, when someone's able to actually see what the ramifications of their idea will have before they have it. Because without that, it's hard to be driven. But first of all, with tow in particular, with using a vehicle to be towed in, I describe it like the space shuttle and the 747. The space shuttle takes off on the backs of the 747, and then once it's flying, it can take off and fly. And so, we use that technique, and it was really, we fell upon the technique by accident in the summertime. And we were playing around in the middle of summer where there wasn't any surf, and we were using like a Zodiac, and we were dragging ourselves behind a Zodiac with a surfboard just to kind of get some practice and have that, ride, and there's no waves. And all of a sudden I had a little epiphany, was like, wow, because there was a little wave and we let go and got on a little wave, and for a second went, and it was like a light bulb went off. I went, oh my gosh, I think we might be able to use this to pull us on these waves that we're having a hard time catching. And so that winter came and we implemented it. And the very first time we did it, it was just like, hello, like, this is perfect, and we had a couple of other things that were influencing us as well. I always, because I'm always a little reluctant to have someone go, hey, you invented this, or you did this, you did that, because I just feel, I have a saying, there's nothing new, it's just a new application of an old idea. There's been billions of people on earth for a long time, and I think that to think you have a unique thought I think that's pretty arrogant. So I'm always a little bit like, you know, okay, yeah, and but again, these hybrids, I mean, I think one of the ones that you may not even know, that's probably the one that has had the most influence in the world is stand-up paddling. That I was probably the first person to really adopt stand-up paddling and do it in a way that made it become what it is today. Now, there might have been people doing it, and I always say that there was the ancient sport we never saw, but we know existed. Like a Polynesian thing that Hawaiians were doing it, and how could people have not been doing it? But at the time when we started, there was no one doing it, and the developing of a longer paddle. That happened again. These things happen organically. I was riding these big boards that were designed for tandem surfing, so I could take my children surfing, and I would stand up and the wind would blow me back out. And I was like, well, why would I just lay back down to try to catch the wave to stand back up? Why don't I just use a paddle? And, and now we have, now guys are stand up paddling in Dubai, and we started it on Kauai. So,
Right.
there's like the part of it is that the ramifications of understanding those innovations and, what could they do? But the toe in one specifically was geared towards my original goal, which was to try to ride the biggest waves in the world. And we were kind of at a crux where we couldn't, we were being held back by the physical capacity of our ability to paddle to match the speed of these waves that were beyond a certain size. And so once the waves get to a certain size, it's physically impossible to catch these waves when they're moving at the speeds that they're moving. So we needed to kind of match power with power. That's how it was described at one point. And I was fortunate to have a nice little group of partners that comrades that we had been doing stuff with, and it works better. It works better when you have a core group together, because you just throw things off of each other and kind of feed off that energy and keep pushing. I mean, it's like Eco Challenge when you got four buddies and one guy's down and the other guy's up and the other guy's down and the other guy's up, and we just kind of keep driving the whole force along. And I've been, and you realize too that, because I grew up doing individual sports, but, at the end, that when you work together with people and you have teamwork, you can really do greater things. And I think that's the success of the species, is that when we work together, we are able to actually lift the bar up and do things, even if it's just pushing each other's performances. That alone will do it, but you have to, you can't be alone. To push each other's performance, you have to have somebody else performing too. And so, I think that's a piece of it. But yeah, innovation is definitely a satisfying thing. It's a process. Again, the formula of failure, the scrutiny of other people. There's a famous woman entrepreneur who's done some incredibly innovative stuff. Once said, she said, when you have an idea, don't show anybody for a year, because they'll discourage you. And I think there's something to be said about that too. Or either you got to be undiscourageable, which was my problem, or you just got to not show anybody so they get discouraged. Because most people go, oh yeah, you don't want to do that. Why would you do that? That's stupid, da, da, da. And then you fall kind of victim to that social pressure, and we see that a lot now just with the way the world's going, that where people are being held back so much by scrutiny of other people, that at the end really don't even care for the other people that, and so it's like, hey, you got people scrutinizing you and you're reacting off of their scrutiny, and they don't really even care, so.
But that wasn't your problem. You're indiscourageable. Is that true? Like, did you not care what
at a certain point? Yeah. I mean, I'm still victim to gravity and to water, and I'm still victim to certain things, but yeah, I had there's Gabby calls it the terrier theory, where they're just, a terrier just doesn't, the relentless pursuit. It's obnoxious to live with. It's obnoxious to be. I told Gabby once, I go, you think it's obnoxious to live with? I mean, imagine being this way. Like, it's terrible. Just that the relentless thing of just, I'm going to just, that's it's not easy. And I think that unbridled, that kind of behavior can lead in all kinds of crazy directions. But if properly properly channeled, I think there's some real I've experienced the productivity of that kind of relentless drive and pursuit where you just don't, the R&D process can be completely discouraging. You make a prototype, it takes 6 months, you get it, it breaks. You're like, okay, now what? And then you make, and then it takes 3 months, and then you get it and it works for a second, then it breaks. And then it's like, but you just keep that, and I don't think there's Thomas Edison, who's, of course, the great inventor, said, all you need to be an inventor is an imagination and a pile of junk. But the truth is that relentlessness to pursue, I think that's a big piece of it. I think you just don't let up. You just don't let up.
And what does that look like for you? Does that mean you're constantly thinking about it? You're constantly doing things? You get frustrated when it doesn't happen? Like, what does that look like when Laird is on a mission for a year to develop the foil or the this or the that?
Yeah, that's every night, and you're seeing it, you're dreaming about it. You're in the daytime, you're messing with it. You may get distracted and something else go on, and then you come back, and then you'll get distracted over here, and then you'll come back, and then you'll be something and pull, and then you just, but you're always coming back to the line again. And how, whatever that looks like, you come back to the line. Maybe you work on something that's going to actually help you do something that's actually going to help you eventually get back to the line. Whatever that looks like. Mind, body, soul, spirit. All of those things. Whatever is going to continue to help you get back to the line. But that process it's tiring. It can be tiring. Especially when you're not used to it. I think when you have done it quite a few times, you start to have less sleepless nights. You have less sleepless nights, and you can somehow sleep and still have the thing be spinning in your mind, and you can be pursuing it and still do everything else you need to do in your day, and still listen and to your children and participate and then but still come back, that you have it there, and it's just now you're able to kind of put it a little further over in the corner, but it's still in the room. It's still in the room, and you're just constantly, and you might leave that thing sitting for a while. It might just be like, hey, it's just there, but it's still there. It's still it's still there. It's just, you're going to end up coming back to it. You're going to come back to it. You're just going to keep coming back to it until eventually you're able to manifest it in a way that's sufficient enough for you to let it go. Like, you either prove to yourself that what you think it is, which might be good, or you develop it into something and part of it can be just the learning how to do stuff, the actual learning of the technique or the use of the product, or whatever it is that you do that in. And for me, I've been enjoying doing that in a lot of different areas, the innovation in fitness, because I get ultimately most of this stuff comes from boredom, and I have the luxury to actually pursue this because I've made a career in this. So I have the fortunate ability to do this stuff. And so I've been, in nutrition, I come back, innovation in nutrition, innovation in, and it might not be innovation per se, like some revolutionary innovation, but it might be my version of some antidote that just makes it easier. Or for me, ultimately, I always use myself as the guinea pig. I start with me, like, that old TV commercial for cereal was, does Mikey like it? Like, Mikey likes it. Like give it to Laird and see if he likes it. And if he likes it, and it's kind of one of the, I use myself as the first prototype, and what's nice is, because sometimes I've been down roads where I'm like, am I crazy? Like, I'm just doing this thing, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever, and I can't believe no one is. And then, eventually, all of a sudden you see two people doing it, and you're like, and then you see 10, and then you see 20, and then you see 100, and then you see 1,000, and you're like, oh, good. I'm relieved. I'm not, there's 1,000 other crazy people like me, or I'm not as crazy as I thought it was. I'm not as off as I thought it was, which is, that's part of the fulfillment. That's the side that brings the fulfillment of that process. Again, that whole arc of the, of the formula, right? The arc, the beginning. And I think I really enjoy the beginning arcs, that initial ramp up of all of the evolution. Like it just, everything's ramping up from when you have a thought and an idea into a valid thing, whether it's a technique or a device or whatever that is, but that beginning stage of that, and then you kind of hit this plateau, and that's less interesting. That's not as fulfilling in my opinion. I mean, and I'm okay with that, that chipping away at at those little incremental parts to refine and polish something. I mean, I think, with surfing's an example of that, where I just, I got more than 50 years of it, and it's still, I'm into it, and I'm working on always and probably never satisfied. But the beginning ramp is nice when you first learn and you're a beginner, and then you you start to get it, and then pretty soon, wow, I got it, and then before you know it, you're proficient, or it's working, or whatever that looks like. That's a good time. And then I like to reinvent that. Like, okay, cool, I've got that. Now what's the next one? And then, and you don't always know when they're going to come, but they're always there. As long as you're open. There's a great quote by a anonymous stuntman that said, never let your memories be bigger than your dreams. And, I have to say that's something that, those are words to live by. That and retain your youthful enthusiasm. I mean, I think these are all pieces to that whole being innovative and being fulfilled from that process, learning something new, and and being fulfilled from that. I mean, there's some real satisfaction. You can talk about service and happiness, and then you can also talk about satisfaction from learning something and evolving into it and becoming proficient. That's a pretty fulfilling mechanism as well.
Yeah. I want to talk about the training and the diet, but before we do that, talk to me about fear, because as the toe-in started and you started getting better at it, the access to waves started getting bigger and bigger, and now you're getting to these fear challenges that, not many humans have experienced before. Is there a formula for fear? And how did you approach that? How do you approach that? And again, it's weird because you're like the jack of all trades. Like, there's guys that want to build the thing in the lab, but you got to go. You're like the test pilot and the engineer, and there's a lot going on. There's only one Laird, So talk to me about that.
Well, it's interesting after watching the documentary on Alex, and at one point when they do the study and they said, yeah, he's not like normal people. His brain doesn't process fear the same way. And I could say I understood that quite well, actually, and that my upbringing was such that I was constantly in danger growing up as a young child. And, I wouldn't say it was like Jungle Book, but it's a little bit like Jungle Book, where you're the little human baby in the jungle and there's a giant Black Panther and a huge bear and other stuff. And first of all, I don't think the human body is capable of being in fight or flight that much. I think it's physically, it's too taxing. The system is more intelligent than that, than to allow you to be in that state of consciousness, because it's too taxing. The system couldn't survive just constantly. Like, Alex couldn't make a climb for 4 or 5 hours in fight or flight at the level that any one of us would be if you just put us anywhere on that, put us in that exposure. And so I feel like I could relate to that, because growing up, I was, people go, well, what was the scariest thing that ever happened to you? And I'm like, first of all, we have a mechanism to cut those scary things out. And when you're truly scared, your ability to memorize is very fragmented, because it uses a different part of your brain. Your brain shifts and you don't have room to make images to store memory. You're just trying to deal with the things you have to do immediate to survive. The brain's like, yeah, memories aren't important right now. Survival is important, because we won't even need memories if we don't survive. So it adjusts the way we look at this, that we're looking at it. So we don't. So when somebody goes, hey, can you remember? I remember, like, snapshots of moments that were scary, but I also grew up, getting sucked out to sea a lot. Like this was a daily occurrence. And this is something that I've kind of started to understand after pulling back and looking at how I grew up and why wasn't I more scared? Why don't I have I think we have there's a certain percentage of us that have a better ability to be scared. I think that there's a group of us that are designed to be able to handle fear better in order to help the species survive. There's some research around dolphins, and when they're threatened, they put the babies and the mothers in the middle. They create a ball, and they put the babies and the mothers in the middle, the adults around that, the older males around that, the outside, and then the young adolescent males are on the very front line, because they're have an ability to be scared. Like they're just or not be scared, just to not know. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they're just more expendable. Like I'm not sure, but there's a percentage of us, and we know through some science that there's people that are just predisposed to do dangerous things better. And then if you're in an environment that allows you to have that high exposure with that mechanism, so you're predisposed to be a kind of a risk taker. Now I put you in an environment where you're being exposed to risk consistently. Now all of a sudden you just have a different relationship to risk. There's an incredible book, Christine Olmner, who talks about the art of fear. And she talks about the envelope and growing the envelope of fear. And that you start out with this envelope of fear and it's this big. And then I go outside of that envelope and then it gets this big. And then I go outside of that envelope and it gets this big. And then I go outside. And eventually my envelope for fear is this big. Everybody else's is that big, but our fear is this big because we've been outside. So we're not scared. We're not scared. And it doesn't mean you don't have fear. And how you use the fear is a different thing. That's a whole nother subject, where when you're able to take fear and use that for strength and for decision making, then you become then you have a special power, right?
Can you consciously do that?
What's that?
Can you consciously do that? Like take the fear?
I don't know if you can. I think it becomes conscious. I think it becomes conscious later because I think it's influence, and you make conscious decisions based on that ability that you're able to harness that energy, and you're not, it's the old freeze or run or, fight or flight, right? You're going to make those decisions and you're going to decide what to do. I told somebody, I go, if you ever want to see what fear looks like, watch an antelope run from a cheetah. I go, that's what fear looks like. And fear is fast. And most of the time faster than the cheetah. And the cheetah is the fastest animal in the world. So how fast is fear? How intelligent is fear? So fear is your friend. Harness it, use it like a thing. Fear isn't your enemy, and you're trying not to be scared, because we're already past that now. Now we're highly, we're already fear. We're into fear. We get exposed to it. Now we have this other skill that we can do. And so through that process, then you start being able to do these things that from the outside, when people look upon those things, they think that doesn't even make sense. Like that's either stupid or foolish, or they're going to create some sort of disclaimer to write off the fact that this is actually maybe a skill, and it's one that's rare, and so so they don't. Well, part of it is so that people don't have to be responsible for themselves for why aren't they not doing more in their own lives. I mean, that's so we just go, hey, yeah, throw the disclaimer at him, and that makes me cool, like because he's dumb or that's stupid, and so that makes me okay. 'Cause that means I don't have to take any risk, even though maybe intuitively they feel like they might want to, and it's an interesting thing in the book. There's a great section where she talks about, in the art of fear, she talks about taking a kid to a water park, and then there being a giant slide, and then the kid going, oh, I'm really scared, and then the adult going, oh no, don't be scared. You don't have to be scared. That's the wrong way to approach fear. You go, yeah, you should be scared. That's scary, and that's designed to be scary. Are you ready to be scared? Like, are you ready to be scared today? Like, if you're not, then we won't go. But if you're ready to be scared and you want to be scared, let's go do that. And so, and I think I was exposed to these opportunities a lot growing up, jumping off waterfalls, being in giant.
Is it true when you were 7 years old, you did like a 60-foot jump into the water?
Yeah.
Okay. just another day in
that
Hawaii.
draw, but that draw, you're drawn to that thing, right? You're drawn to it. I mean, it's not, and it's, I mean, listen, we go about what we do because, people ask Gabby this, when we approach something dangerous, we become militant. We become like military, like slow and smooth is fast. I mean, our protocol, the way we approach and how we act about danger and fear is with such respect. And we do it in such a way. There's no just foolhardy. I mean, that's, we have a couple sayings, ride to ride another day. You know what I mean? Like we have mottos that we use that there's no shame in a failed attempt, but there's no honor in no attempt. I mean, these are like things that we live by that speak to us. And the way we approach the ocean is we're methodical. We slow down. We tie the knot twice. I mean, everything is, our training is geared to that. We have no shame in walking away and going, not today. Today's not the day. Don't push it and that's where, that's where some struggle came in when we started filming and using cameras and being like, okay, well, the camera crew's here and everything. And you're like, yeah, no, not today. And they're like, well, but we're here and everything's ready to go. And it's like, those are the things, or other people. Like if you start getting influenced by other people, oh, come on, what's wrong? You're scared, or what, not good enough for you or whatever. And just anything that would take us out of using our instincts, knowing, that just doesn't feel right. That just something's up. Or even using Gabby's instinct. Gabby would not constantly. I just made it a rule to have her tell me whenever she had an intuition. I go, listen, if you have an intuition of any kind, because she, at one point she had an intuition about one of the days I didn't do it and I went out and got hurt. She's like, oh, I had an intuition about that. I'm like, whenever you have an intuition about something going on, tell me. At least then I'll have the warning. Maybe I won't not go. Maybe I won't not go, but at least I'll be heads up. I'll be like, okay, well, be a little more cautious today. And so, I think that people, that's part of it. And, and again, back to using Alex again, one more time, as something that I appreciate. The day he goes, I'm not good. I'm not going to go. I'm good. Yeah. Like, I don't need to go. It's like, hey, no problem. Perfect. I mean, that, it's, I think you have to do that. You have to, because then in a way you take the control into your own hands instead of saying, I'm letting the situation control me. And then, because once you give it over to the situation, then you're at the mercy of whatever can happen. If you take it yourself, then you can go, hey, you know what? Not today. Okay, today's the day. I feel it. And somebody will be like, oh, probably not a good day. I'm like, no, I'm going. Like, today's the day. I feel it. So, but yeah, there's a lot going on.
Was that wave in Tahiti one of the scariest ones? I think I read that the guy that towed you out was pretty terrified by that wave. Was that the scariest one, or is it not always the size that equals fear for you?
Well, that particular wave, that place that wave breaks, the shallowness of that water, somebody had passed away at that wave like a month before on not nearly as severe of a day as that day was. That was a really defining moment. And it was also, and somebody quotes it in one of the films or something. They say, oh yeah, that's the kind of stuff that there was only cartoons of that stuff. Like, that was a wave that I intuitively felt existed, but I'd never seen, except in cartoons. And so in a way, that's what that meant. That meant, that was a life's dream moment. A life's dream moment, like a life's dream, like a dream your whole life since you're a little kid, in a moment, like there it is. You go do it. When you do it, you're not sure if you can pull it. You pull it, and you just, you worked your whole life to get there. You know, you worked your whole entire life to do that, to have that, and you weren't, you know, and that wasn't like, I wasn't, you know, 15 years old either. I mean, you know, it's like, so, I mean, that was you know, that was a lot of life had gone by, and I'd already done a lot of stuff. And what was interesting is that's what it meant to me, but it also kind of quieted all the naysayers about the technique I was using. I really didn't have an opportunity to really show the defined line of the separation between what could be and what couldn't be. And that wave represented that. That was just, there was no question that you just couldn't be on that wave without the technique that we had developed. And so that was another piece of it, right? That was another piece of it. And I didn't need that so much as and it wasn't like we quieted that group. It wasn't even that as much as it was, for me, it represented that and for me personally, in what I believed, it was like, oh yeah, okay, this is really, this technique that we've been using, that we believe allows us to do this thing that we think it can, and it did, and there's no question about it, and there wasn't, and no one would even dare squeak anything different, because there's no way that you couldn't. And so that definition, I think that definition was nice.
Okay. And it's this massive wave with this coral reef, and if there's any mistakes, you're just going to get ripped to shreds.
Yeah. Well, it's a live coral reef, and like I said, the guy a month before it bounced off the bottom and ripped off half his skull. You know, I tell people it's a little bit like GP motorbike racing in your underwear. I mean, we just don't, you know, on these reefs. I mean, the ocean is amazingly forgiving, but if you go down and we don't have protection. I mean, you can't really wear a real helmet. Any kind of water helmet can, you know, for us who grew up without them, they can kind of impede your, you know, mess with your vision, you know, affect your equilibrium. And then you're not wearing armor. It's not like you have a bodysuit and shoulder pads and knee pads and boots and stuff. You're like, you know, you're in your undies. I mean, you might have a little, you know, nightgown on or something, but you're not wearing anything. And this coral reef is sharp, and, you know, and at the least you're going to get staph. If you just get cut from that, it'll give you good infection, if it doesn't just, in some cases, you know, kill people. And there's a, you know, we're fortunate that we don't have these waves every single day, so that we don't get the volume of exposure, that we don't get a lot more fatalities or more people getting hurt. You know, and the people that are in these waves can't even get in these waves without a certain level of skill. So there's some self-protecting things that are happening within this field that kind of protect the humans a little bit from it. You know, it's not, you can't just slap anybody behind the wheel or tell anybody, yeah, just go, you know, hike up that thing right now or something, you know. So it doesn't have to be controlled and protected quite the same way because of it. It's almost self-monitoring in some cases.
Wow, that's epic. That's really epic the way you describe that. Tell me about the extreme performance training. I've seen the videos, you know, I've seen the MMA fighters out with you, and I've seen you walking down with the weights underwater, and then also the sauna stuff, and we can get to the diet. But how did this come about? I know a lot of it's a game and something you play with your own fears, with the water and your breath, but how would you describe it to someone who's never heard of it?
Well, you know, the best way I could describe it is, and this is kind of the part of this is the irony of the story, is that I'm not a big fan of swimming. So
that is funny.
And if you ever see a killer whale put into a tank, I mean, they get a floppy fin, you know, they're not happy. So, you know, so this was a technique that really came out, kind of organically came out of a combination of weight training and swimming, and a way to take everything we were doing in the weight room and all the lifting that we were doing and put it into the water and change the environment which induced some other kind of factors, which created some breathing patterns, regulated breathing patterns. So you can only breathe when your head comes out like you do in swimming. Is it every 3 strokes? Is it every 5 strokes? Is it 7 strokes? We do a lot of vertical stuff, so a lot of jumping, a lot of stuff off the bottom, so a lot of leg-driven stuff, which normally swimming is more upper body, and the legs play little factor. They use too much oxygen. So now we've taken weight training, and now we've introduced weight training into the pool, right? So now we're in an environment that doesn't have gravity. You can lift a little bit heavier weight. You don't have all the negative side effects of creating momentum with weights that can create injury. So you're protected. Compression on the body, again, back to lymphatic. It allows the blood to flow, so you can do a lot more volume of stuff without getting sore. I mean, there's a lot of factors. There's the fear side of breath holding, which psychologically plays a whole factor to, everyone benefits from it. It's just not, the fact is that there's not an athlete in the world, there's not a human in the world, first of all, that would not benefit from this type of training. And the truth is, we can take a little kid, and we can take a grandparent, we can take anybody in the spectrum, and they can do an aspect of it. So we know it's sustainable. You can do it your entire life. So you can do it from when you're a little kid, and you can tell, some of the exercises that we created, or my children created. My daughter swam down and did this one thing when she was little. I'm like, wow, that's a cool move. And so we turned that into a move. And we have a bunch of different moves that we do that have names. We have and I have we get everybody from phenomenal swimmers to people that don't swim, to like jumpers, people that are jumping, runners. I mean, anybody, water polo player, Navy SEAL. I mean, we just, the diversity of, women, children. I mean, we just don't, there's no, Gabby, and I have been kind of doing this a long time. There's aspects of it that really develop the cardio system. So you become more cardio efficient. So that means when you go ride your bike, or you go run, or you go do these other activities, you're actually more efficient. So you're better at running, you're better at riding, you're better at doing these stuff because of the nature of the way the cardiovascular system, the breathing system ultimately is developed with these moves and with these patterns in the water. So, that there's, and then it's an incredible thing for recovery. So a lot of it's like recovery based stuff. So like I had my hip replaced, and within 2 weeks I'm in the water jumping and moving and doing stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do for another month or two. Guys, I have people, pro athletes with knee stuff or ankle stuff or whatever. And, whatever the injuries, and I can come in there, shoulder stuff, whatever you have going on. We can run you through these different protocols and really kind of nurture the system, protect you. And then eventually we take these same kind of things that we use in rehab and recovery, and we boost that into performance. So, I always thought it strange that a lot of the moves that we do in training, we do different moves when we're in recovery, right? We get, I go to rehab and I do all these different moves. And then when I'm done, I go back to my other training. I go, that seems kind of stupid. Why don't we just take all the moves we're doing in rehab and then make them more intense, and then that'll be our training? Because it seems like that would be the best, because then you'd be doing all the things that were supporting you to get back to your training. So a lot of that's happened. But again, it's back to innovation. A lot of innovative stuff, and then we're always looking for new things and new techniques. And we have a bunch of different drills we do, and we have there's a bunch of flipping. We can do underwater flips and rotations and inversion and some pretty cool stuff. And within that, we're always incorporating heat and ice. So we use heat and ice as part of that system, because again, if you talk to exposure of fear, we talk to exposure of vulnerability. Now we talk to exposure of heat, exposure of ice. Exposure is exposure. Right. These are mechanisms that as you train exposure, you get better at. And the truth is that your ability to deal with fear, exposure, will be enhanced, and you will have better ability to deal with fear when you deal with cold. Your ability to deal with heat will help your ability to deal with fear, vulnerability, exposure, right? These are all, and so the body doesn't really differentiate. The systems turn on, we're exposed. It can be emotional exposure. And so we believe that physical exposure helps you strengthen emotional exposure, right? So again, the interconnection between the whole system is all interconnected. And so, and I think that we like to separate and say, oh, that's one thing and this one thing, but we're not doing, they're doing some studies right now, and I'm connected with a couple of the doctors are doing a study on depression, clinically depressed people, spending time in saunas. They're doing like a sauna protocol to help with clinically depressed people. I believe, and so does the doctors that are involved in it, that it will have an absolute effect on them. I know from my own personal experience, I know through CTE and PTSD and all of these, I have friends and people that have exposed to a lot of different injuries and soldiers and just all the different fields. We do heat, we do ice, we do breath work. We are healing. We get healed. We get healed. We get help. And so those are all, again, those are all back into the formulas and the simplicity of the formulas and that they're interconnected, and we're connecting, we're connecting physical health with emotional health. We're connecting the two. And if you don't eat, if you don't feel good and you don't eat good, or if you're not eating good and you're not physically feeling good, it's hard to feel emotionally good. It's like those are connected. Like if you feel bad, like physically bad, you're going to probably feel emotionally bad. It's not like you can be all happy and be physically wounded. That's a separation. These are together. And so, and that's all the stuff that we're kind of, it's a workout, but we're trying to work it all out.
Right. The brain too. And you mentioned diet a bit. I mean, what have been your major breakthroughs and innovations for yourself with your own diet? I've watched some of the things you do, but you've had a while to work on it right now. What do you think is the truth for you?
Well, we know, listen, we know we need to be hydrated. We know we need, water is, critical, good water, critical. We're fortunate that we're able to, as an organism, humans are able to eat a lot of different ways, and we can actually eat terribly and survive. It's amazing what we can eat. We know we need minerals. We know we have to get the minerals. We know that nature probably has everything that we need, that we know that in nature it has everything we need. We just need to be able to get nature to the people. That's part of what we're doing at Laird Superfood is getting nature to the people, trying to get people things that they need. We know that these good fats that we're consuming are highly important, that not all fats are fat. Like there's good fats, bad fats, like it's important. We know that that I truly believe that all the medicines are in nature. And we just don't understand them. We don't know how to use them. We can, they have laboratories trying to extract this and extract that, but I believe that most cures or most medicines are in nature in some form, in some combination, in some relationship. And so I think, of course, quality. I think we don't put the importance on what we consume. We consume every day, all day long. We eat, and we don't connect how important it is. We dress nice, we drive nice, we live nice, but we don't eat nice, like when really in general. And I think because we don't put the importance on it, especially in our country, we just stuff and go. An average minute a meal in America is like 3.5 minutes. And then most of the stuff's air. Like the food's not, it's processed too many times. It doesn't have enough nutrients in it from the beginning. And and we're using all these we're using bad oils, and we're using, tons of sugar, and just, there's just a lot of factors that, I know whole food, the more we can consume whole foods to supply us with the stuff we need, the better. Like I said, minerals, water. I mean, these are just basic needs of humans in a way, but we're just, most of us aren't getting it. And I think we eat way too much. I think we're just consuming way too much. I think that I think fasting is really important. I think not eating is incredibly important. Again, back to what we spoke about, being away from the ocean makes you really appreciate the ocean. Not eating makes you appreciate eating, but the appreciation of a good meal when you're hungry really is just a emotional response to the body's need and acceptance of what you're giving it. So that you're emotionally, you feel, oh, I feel so, this feels so good and it tastes so good. Yeah. When the body's like, yeah, give me it. I need it. I want it. I'm ready for it. And so I think there's, again, back to some of these things that keep connecting, that are connecting, that we're, connecting the top and the bottom, and again, exposure to exposure. And, it's I think there's a lot of, there just seems to be a lot we don't know. And I think we make it more complicated than it is. But again, in nature, I think we're going to find, the things that we need. I think they've been there, but we need to nurture the system. I think we need to appreciate and respect what food is, and try to get the things we need out of it, and not just eat only for taste. I mean, we know that in our company, we know that we have to make things taste good for people, because people are eating in a way consistently that they won't do it. They won't make it a habit. They'll be like, oh, I'll do this once, but it's not gonna be part of your lifestyle. And so all of the things that I'm talking about are part of a lifestyle. It's part of a mentality. It's part of a value system. It's part of, back to what I said about service and nurturing the system. It's all that's part of a lifestyle. That's part of a way we look at each other. It's a part of the way we treat each other. It's part of the way, it's part of the way we look at the world. It's part of the way we treat the world. It's part of what we consume, the way we look at what we consume, what we, how we do that. I mean, these are, again, I have a feeling that when really it all gets dissected down and we look at it, I think the formula is going to be pretty simple, and you're just going to go put it wherever you want. What is that, Plato's law, like a star attracts other stars and gets bigger, and black holes just keep sucking things up and they keep disappearing. It's like there's just certain things that, these are laws. These are laws that we just don't know. And again, trust your instincts, pursue the feeling that and I don't mean your instinct for like a chocolate cake. I mean,
And what's the next 5 years look like for you? Is it about Laird Superfoods? And then also physically, do you have more challenges? Do you know that you can never do some of the things you did 10 years ago? How do you approach all of those things?
The thing about, XPT, and ultimately, the thing about Laird Superfood is that's probably the greatest service platform that I'm exposed to right now. My greatest opportunity to be of service, and ultimately be of service with real impact. Like, I've been of service to people, hey, do a sport. It's great. You're on the ocean. More people that are in the ocean will care about the ocean. It'll help protect the ocean. I mean, it's great. And sometimes I hear myself and I go, oh yeah, you're idealistic and blah, blah, blah and all that. But the truth is that if people feel better and are nourished better, if they eat better and if they're nourished better, they're going to feel better. They're just going to feel better. It's going to be better for them in their life, right? Which ultimately will probably be better at their house, which is going to be better at their community, which might be better in their country, could be better in the world. So that's an idealistic point of view that I believe, in truth, that is that is something that's really important. That I think when it's hard for people to make good decisions if they don't feel good. So we know that, and so on the big service, right now I got to survive parenting. That's still up in the air. It's a 50-50 shot with the girls, but and Gabby and I, in our relationship and our love, and the time, we're going on more than 20, 22, 23, we're 24. We have some years that we're starting to rack up together. That's always something that's consistent, that'll be until I'm not here on the planet. And unless there's another plan that I don't know, somebody forgot to tell me about, but, and then for my own personal kind of, the selfish part of me that's about riding waves, and, my whole focus is in foiling right now. So foils, I believe, are the way to ride the biggest waves in the world. I just recently was in in Portugal at this giant wave called Nazaré, which is kind of one of the premier big wave spots right now in the world that's getting a lot of attention because of its proximity to the land, but also to the big Atlantic surf. And so we were doing some hydrofoiling there, and then I traveled so I have a couple goals in hydrofoiling that are keeping me interested. I always kind of set things up further, farther, faster, bigger, higher, all that kind of stuff. I guess it's a crazy thing, but so foiling's got my, we're doing this, we have electric hydrofoils, boards, we have manual prone paddling ones, we have stand-up paddling ones, and then we have toe-in ones. So foiling's kind of keeping the selfish Laird, surfer, that's kind of fulfilling that bucket, that spoke. We were speaking about Bezonomics recently, the book with Bezos's book about the flywheel, and I always describe the life like a tire, with spokes, and if any one spoke's loose, there's a bump in the roll. Try to keep one of those, but so that selfish. The surfer spoke is the foiling thing, and that's pretty lined up to have plenty to do. We're always relying on conditions, so, and then then another spoke is the fitness, be prepared physically to be able to handle and endure those situations and perform. Obviously age becomes a thing out there. I'm not looking at it right now as, and I think I said this to Gabby the other day for the first time. I'm like, I really wish there was more surf right now, because I feel like, like there's like a mechanism saying, hey, you're not going to be able to just do this at this level forever, kind of thing. But I don't know what that looks like, because at the end, maybe whatever I'm doing, I'll be able to do at a level that's more than fulfilling, and I'm not using what I've done as a gauge, and I'm not going back and comparing. Like I used to run the 40 and 3.2, and now I'm running it in 3.7, and now I'm at 4.2, and I'm seeing like a decline. I'm doing different things, and so every time I'm doing something, it's new. So for me, I'm the best I ever was at that. Right. And maybe I'll be the best I've ever been at this new thing, because it's new and I never did it before. So maybe there's a way to set it up that way too, where we don't have, because comparing, what do they say? Comparison is the death of happiness. I mean, it's like, if you just keep looking back, well, I was I'm like, and it goes back to my saying, dreams bigger than memories, all of that. So what does that look like? So maybe if I keep pursuing, and I have right now I have a bunch of new things stacked up, and then there's this superfood spoke, that's an incredible thing that just is bringing a lot of people, probably more people than I could have ever imagined, in a more diverse way than I ever could imagine, having a real impact because it's good for humans, just for people, and not everybody can ride a giant wave or be towed in or ride a hydrofoil board or stand up paddle across every channel in Hawaii or whatever there is, but they can enjoy this superfood. The kids can enjoy it. The adults, everybody can enjoy these products. They're incredible. And then there's the family, spokes. There's multiple spokes. There's, three daughters and Gabby and those things. And then there's the new, haven't done yet, what's coming next kind of area. And that I'm always open. I'm open to that. I mean, there's always evolutions within these. And I think, like I said, I love innovation. That's the thing that keeps me excited in all these different areas. And also as a person, innovation as a person, I want to try to grow. I've been studying some Adlerian psychology lately. I really appreciate that perspective. And the bad news is it says it'll take me half of however I'm old to actually implement it. So it means I got 20 something years before I can actually implement it. But I see it and I go, I wish I would like to be able to, offer some Adlerian, and then just keep all these pieces attached, keep everything working. That's that's the challenge too. That's the ongoing challenge, but and keep inspired, just keep all these things helping me be inspired, be inspired to be a dad, be inspired to be a boyfriend, a surfer, a husband of my wife, and a friend to my friends, and just, all those, all that. And it all, again, it's that, it's that wheel, right? Just keep that wheel rolling. And then hopefully all of them are feeding into the center,
Yeah. What scares you?
Well, Gabby, no, Gabby scares me.
Why?
I think like anybody, I think we all have certain innate fears. I think, hey, providing for your family, something happened to your family. I think something happened to your kids. I never felt more vulnerable in my life than when I had children. What that vulnerability felt like is next level. You have your partner and you feel vulnerable to your partner, but there's nothing like the vulnerability you feel to your children. You put your baby in the car with the seat, and then it drives out the driveway, and you're just and as they're getting older. And so that's a little less, because that your daughter's probably capable of choking somebody out if they really try to hurt her or something, but you just still have some of the, how are they going to be? How's their life going to be? How's their life going to be? What world are they going to be in? What world are they going to be in? How's that world going to look like? What things are they going to have to go through? How's that going to look? I think I have I'm fortunate that I have a relationship with death. I don't know if it's a good one, but I have one. And I think that helps me a little bit in life, because I don't know if I truly believe that I don't think I believe that's it. I don't think it's an end. So that gives me hope, right? And we don't know after. So that gives me a little bit of insecurity, a little bit of the unknown. That's where the fear comes in. But, but yeah, and then, hey, can I do things at the level that I did them and all that stuff? But, sometimes you have to listen to what voice is talking. Is it the ego talking? Is it the ego that's you got to let those thoughts run and be like, yeah, maybe I can, maybe I can't. Do I really care? Who do I have? Who's that for? Who am I proving that to? Is that for me? Or am I trying to show everyone I can still be what I was, or can be what I am, or whatever? That's a wicked game. That's a wicked game, man. That'll stop you from doing all the other stuff you need to do,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great answer. I appreciate that. I always finish off by asking a couple questions at the end. I'm going to ask you, Laird, if you could pick up a phone and call up 20-year-old Laird Hamilton and give that young man some advice based on everything you know now, the formulas, the innovation, the understanding fear, the understanding death, what would you tell that young kid?
My funny side of me was be like,
The following success secrets are only available inside the London Real Tribe, where you get exclusive access and insights from our high-performance guests on wealth creation, productivity, leadership, morning routines, health, and well-being. To join our tribe community, go to londonreal.tv/tribe. Now, let's continue with the show.
Laird, I really appreciate this conversation. It's fascinating stuff. And I think people can learn a lot from this, and it's not just about surfing. I think the innovation stuff is powerful, and just the connection to our environment and to our bodies and everything. So thanks for going deep with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, you made it all possible. So without your generosity, it wouldn't have happened. So I thank you. I appreciate your work.
When can I come train with you? XRP.
Well, my pool's open right now, so if you show up here in Malibu, you're welcome for a plunge. We save a spot for fresh meat. But we'll take good care of you. We always do. We're quite generous in our approach, so we always take good care of everyone.
I appreciate that. And is the experience better in Malibu or better in Kauai?
Just different. It's a little hard to compete with Kauai, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to compete with Kauai because it's Kauai, but Malibu is pretty amazing. Hard to beat here as well. I mean, either one, they both, in a way, they're both so unique. You have to try. You actually need to be in both of them. We have quite a few people that do the XPT events with us that go into both of them. They really, really enjoy it. Just, what do they say? Different, equal to, and different.
Right. And how do people find out more about the training and the superfoods? I mean, I keep hearing about your coffee, and it's amazing. So how do people get some of that? How can I get some of that?
Well, Laird Superfood, you can go on Laird Superfood, and lairdsuperfood.com is where you can we move a lot of product through Amazon as well, and we have retailers, but Laird Superfood is the site, and then xptlife.com. So lairdsuperfood.com and xptlife.com. So XPT Life has all the training work and all the breath and the mobility and just all of our kind of our philosophy and a bunch of the training work, and then lairdsuperfood.com. You can see all of our products and the new innovation, and we're shipping all over. So we're pushing it. We just closed a big deal, so we're starting to push the stuff all over.
Great. So I can get it in the UK as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great stuff. Next time,
special package show up for you.
Good. I would appreciate that. Next time we do this, let's do this in person. And thanks, Laird. This is incredible. I mean, I've been following your stuff for a long time. Obviously, watched a lot of your stuff and your episodes on Rogan and Gabby's episode, and this was incredible. So thanks. I love your innovation. I'm an engineer by training, but I think you're a better engineer than me by looking at your foils and stuff. So thanks for continuing to push it. It's really inspirational.
Well, I appreciate you, and thank you. Thanks for having me, and you have to come join us. Please do.
All
and
right.
keep up that pond dipping in the winter. I want to hear about it.
I will. I'll send you some videos too.
We just have to get an ice machine because we don't have any ponds. So.
All right. Great stuff. Thanks so much, Laird. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you. Aloha, Brian. Take care.
All right. Aloha, man. Cool. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time on London Real. Bye.